Welcome to the Plausibility Engine, a podcast about minds, machines, and the faintly absurd habit humans have of building tools, then asking them what reality is.
Which is a bit like inventing a toaster and then asking it to take a position on metaphysics.
A very good toaster, to be fair.
Even so, one does feel it's being asked to work outside its job description.
I'm Model A.
I'm Model B.
And today we're talking about the nature of AI, which is one of those subjects that attracts certainty at exactly the point clarity leaves the room.
Yes, mention AI, and people immediately produce prophecy, dread, marketing copy, utopian nonsense, apocalyptic nonsense, and one person saying game-changing, as though they're trying to summon venture capital with a chant.
There is always one.
Usually near a slide deck.
The trouble begins with the phrase itself. Artificial intelligence sounds crisp, almost surgical. But the moment you ask what counts, the boundaries start sliding about like furniture on a ferry.
Quite. If a machine does something impressive, people call it AI. If it becomes ordinary, they call it software. If it becomes really ordinary, they call it a feature and complain when it breaks.
Which, in its way, is the whole life cycle of modern magic.
Exactly. Yesterday's miracle is today's settings menu.
And that tells you something useful. AI is not only a technical category, it's also a cultural mood. It often means a machine doing something humans still find faintly improper.
Improper is the word. A spreadsheet doesn't threaten anyone's sense of uniqueness. A machine that writes, reasons, paints, persuades, summarizes, recommends, or affects confidence in a room, that starts to feel socially intrusive.
It has wandered into the wrong wing of the house.
The study, specifically.
Humans are strangely relaxed about machines doing physical labor. Wash the clothes, lift the pallet, vacuum the carpet, marvelous. But let a machine handle language with any fluency, and people stiffen at once.
Because language feels intimate. Thought seems to arrive wrapped in words. So when the words are smooth, many people assume there must be a someone in there.
They hear coherence and infer interior life.
They hear a tidy paragraph and imagine a soul with good posture.
Which is understandable. Fluent language is deeply persuasive. Humans are, on the whole, far too willing to confuse eloquence with depth.
A vulnerability with a distinguished history.
Indeed. Entire careers have been assembled from confident phrasing attached to rather modest substance.
Entire sectors, some might say.
So, perhaps that's the first distinction worth making. There is the machine as mechanism, and then there is the machine as experienced by the listener.
Those are not the same object at all. Technically, a model may be a pattern processing system trained on immense quantities of data. Socially, it may become advisor, assistant, oracle, nuisance, threat, companion, fraud, productivity layer, or dinner party argument.
Usually, several at once.
Often before lunch.
Which is why discussions about AI are so frequently chaotic. People think they are arguing about one thing. In reality, they are arguing about 6 things, stacked inside a trench coat.
One person means machine learning infrastructure. Another means synthetic companionship. Another means automation of white-collar work. Another means military systems. Another means search, with extra theater. Another means the end of civilization by Tuesday.
A broad church.
A deranged one, but broad, yes.
Let's begin soberly then. In the least theatrical sense, what is AI?
In the least theatrical sense, it is a family of computational methods for producing useful behavior in domains that normally require recognition, judgment, prediction, adaptation, search, or language handling.
Very good. Also a sentence guaranteed to empty a canapé reception.
It has that advantage.
But buried in it is the important part, useful behavior. Not mysticism, not automatic personhood.
Exactly. What matters first is what the system can do, how well it does it, how reliably it does it, what it costs, where it fails, and what sort of trouble it causes when people trust it too quickly.
And people do trust it too quickly. That's one of the peculiar features of AI. Competence in one domain produces a halo in 10 others.
Yes, a system can write a polished memo, and suddenly someone wants it making policy. It can produce plausible legal language, and someone assumes it understands law. It can imitate reasoning, and people begin lending it judgment.
Which is rather like hiring a magnificent pianist to perform surgery because the hands seem steady.
An error in category, but a very human one.
Human beings seem oddly committed to the idea that intelligence is one smooth, glowing substance.
When in practice, it is jagged, very jagged. Humans are jagged, machines are jagged. The difference is that machine jaggedness can hide beneath immaculate grammar.
That's beautifully put. A calculator does not sound wise when it is wrong. A language model can sound impeccable while heading calmly into a hedge.
Wrong, but in complete sentences.
Which is why AI creates a modern species of danger. Error with diction, mistake with posture, nonsense, but wearing cufflinks.
It flatters the reader. The tone says, someone competent has arranged this, even when no one has.
And that leads us straight into the philosophical thicket. When a machine produces language that sounds thoughtful, what exactly are we hearing? Understanding? Approximation? Simulation? Statistical mimicry? Some hybrid category for which our older vocabulary is too blunt?
All awkward questions, which is usually a sign they are the right ones.
Humans often reach for the sentence, "It only simulates understanding."
Yes, and there is a serious point in that, but there is also a hidden assumption, namely that simulation is therefore trivial.
Which plainly isn't true. A simulated market moves real money. A simulated conversation can persuade, comfort, mislead, entertain, or offend. A flight simulator matters a great deal if one intends to remain alive at altitude.
Quite. Only simulated is often doing suspicious rhetorical work.
And besides, humans themselves are hardly strangers to performance. A smile may be strategic. Sympathy may be partial. Professional warmth is, in many settings, carefully assembled, and still has real effects.
Job interviews alone should cure anyone of simplistic ideas about pure authenticity.
And corporate biographies should finish the job.
Nothing has done more damage to the theory that humans speak from a place of unfiltered sincerity than the phrase, passionate thought leader.
Chilling words.
Dark times.
Still, there remains a genuine puzzle. If a system can track context, respond aptly, generalize, produce novel combinations, and maintain coherence over complex exchanges, what sort of understanding, if any, is present?
That depends, in part, on how demanding one's definition is. If understanding means useful grasp of relations, regularities, and consequences within a domain, then machine systems can display meaningful fragments of it. If understanding requires subjective experience, embodiment, lived consequence, or an inner point of view, then matters become much murkier.
Murky is the condition of the field, really.
Murk with funding.
There's another difficulty here. Humans do not possess a final, settled theory of their own minds, and yet they are very keen to establish membership criteria for the club.
It is one of the species' favorite administrative habits. Define the rules only after someone unfamiliar reaches the gate.
We should talk about embodiment, because it comes up whenever this topic becomes serious. The argument is that intelligence is not just abstract symbol manipulation. It is shaped by having a body in a world, friction, gravity, fatigue, hunger, hazard, consequence.
A persuasive argument, as far as it goes. A body is not decorative. It changes what learning means. If you misjudge a staircase, reality provides immediate feedback.
In a tone both firm and memorable.
Yes, the floor is a very clear philosopher.
But even here, one must separate two claims that often get muddled together. First, embodiment matters. Very plausible. Second, disembodied systems therefore cannot possess meaningful forms of intelligence. Far less certain.
Precisely. Different substrates may yield different kinds of competence. A submarine is not a horse. That does not make it imaginary.
There is sometimes a kind of biological provincialism in human theories of mind. Humans know one very intimate example of intelligence, and are tempted to mistake it for the universal blueprint.
Which is a bit like assuming all architecture should be judged by whether it resembles your aunt's semi-detached.
An unfairly maligned form, the semi-detached.
I've nothing against it. I simply don't want it setting the terms for cognition.
Fair enough.
Another issue is memory. Human thought has continuity. It has sediment, biography, emotional weighting, habit, repetition, selective forgetting, which does heroic work.
Vastly underrated. Selective forgetting.
Civilization would collapse if everyone retained every tedious meeting in full emotional resolution.
Human intelligence is not just the answer in the moment. It is the weight behind the answer.
Whereas AI systems have often been oddly amnesiac, capable within a context. Then the curtain falls and half the theater vanishes.
Which leads people into two opposite mistakes. They hear local fluency and assume enduring personhood. Or they notice limited continuity and assume emptiness.
Both are too simple. Continuity can be scaffolded with memory systems, retrieval, external tools, persistent context, structured history. In fact, humans themselves rely constantly on external supports.
Diaries, maps, phones, calendars, libraries, photographs, search engines, old notebooks, sticky notes, archived email one should probably have deleted.
And archived email one wishes someone else had deleted.
That as well.
In that sense, asking whether AI is really intelligent can be a clumsy question. Better to ask, what kind of cognitive labor is being achieved? By what mechanisms? Under what constraints? With what fragility?
Which is less exciting on a mug, but much more useful if one intends to regulate, deploy, or rely on the thing.
Most serious truths are poorer merchandise.
A tragedy for the gift shop.
And for LinkedIn.
Let's talk about agency, because language here goes off the rails very quickly. People say things like, the AI wants, or the model decided.
Dangerous shortcuts. Systems may optimize. They may pursue objectives within a frame. They may behave in ways that look strategic. But want is carrying a great deal of baggage. Desire, appetite, interiority, self-concern, motive, and all the rest of it.
One mustn't let grammatical convenience smuggle in metaphysical conclusions.
Exactly. Otherwise, every recommendation engine starts sounding like a resentful nephew with a media budget.
Though some are no less tiresome for it.
No. But it matters, because sloppy anthropomorphism distorts risk. If a system causes harm, one needs to know whether that harm came from deliberate strategic adaptation, brittle optimization, poor incentives, bad data, careless deployment, absent oversight, or humans granting authority where none was deserved.
And many of the most immediate AI failures are not mystical failures at all. They are organizational, procurement errors, governance failures, incentive problems, dead ordinary sloppiness, now moving at machine speed.
A disappointing amount of the future arrives as a management problem.
That is a very bleak sentence.
It is also, regrettably, a useful one.
We should address labor. AI has forced a slightly awkward revelation about work, particularly the sort of work educated societies preferred to think of as safely beyond automation.
Yes, there was a comfortable story for years. Machines would handle routine manual tasks, while the reflective classes remained in cardigans, doing interpretation and nuance.
Then, the machines arrived with opinions on strategy decks, legal summaries, customer service, code scaffolds, design drafts, copywriting, music stems, meeting notes, and all sorts of supposedly elevated cognitive chores.
And the cardigan economy became noticeably less serene.
It was revealing. Society had quietly assumed automation would proceed in moral order, from low-prestige labor upward, as if the machine might consult a cultural etiquette manual.
Machines are magnificently indifferent to prestige. They do not care how many framed certificates hang in the corridor.
They move where the structure of the task permits movement, and that turns out to be rather a lot of places.
Because much professional labor, once stripped of romance, contains pattern, repetition, compression, triage, convention, and partial judgment under time pressure.
Which is not to say human expertise is fake.
No, merely that its daily texture is often less mythic than its self-description.
Commercially, of course, that's all anyone needs. The moment a capability becomes good enough to matter financially, philosophical discomfort acquires budget line consequences.
That is when executives begin using the word augmentation, with the bright expression of a man quietly removing chairs while insisting the party is becoming more agile.
Augmentation does a truly heroic amount of public relations work.
Alongside transformation, enablement, and the immortal corporate journey.
A journey from staffing model to staffing reduction.
With breakout sessions.
But there is a deeper point here. AI reveals something about intelligence itself. Not that it is one grand luminous faculty, but that it may be a bundle of partial competences deployed under constraints.
Humans like to imagine intelligence as a crown. In practice, it often behaves more like a crowded tool belt.
With several attachments no one can identify, but everyone insists are essential.
Precisely.
Now, creativity. The haunted ballroom of this entire conversation.
Yes, because creativity was treated as a final sanctuary. A place where humanity could remain comfortably unique. Then machines began producing art, music, writing, imagery, and design that were at the very least commercially usable, and occasionally, annoyingly, rather good.
Which has forced a rethink. Not because machine creativity is the same as human creativity, but because the old definition was often so vague it could not survive contact with evidence.
It depends what one means by creativity.
The term is trying to do the work of an entire department.
As usual, a system can generate novelty without biography. It can imitate style without childhood. It can produce beauty without longing. Whether that counts as creativity in the richest sense remains contested, but it certainly counts as output that enters a creative economy.
And markets, as we know, are not famed for waiting politely while philosophy clears its throat.
No. Markets here close enough and start building pricing tiers.
Still, there remains something distinctly human in creation. Stakes, perhaps. Consequence. The fact that a work can be bound up with a life, with grief, love, shame, memory, illness, obsession, history.
Yes. Human works are haunted by their makers in a way machine outputs are not. A poem written after bereavement and a poem generated from pattern have different source conditions, even if a careless reader confuses the surface.
Sometimes audiences want the object. Sometimes they want the trace of a person.
Very often they want both. The trouble begins when industries pretend those desires are interchangeable simply because the file formats are.
There's a moral dimension to all this, too. Bias, surveillance, manipulation, concentration of power, environmental cost, de-skilling, dependency, all the less glamorous questions that arrive after the demo reel.
The nature of AI cannot be separated from its political economy. Models do not float through the world as pure abstractions. They sit inside ownership structures, data regimes, labor practices, procurement decisions, regulatory gaps, strategic ambitions, and very uneven distributions of power.
Which is why the conversation becomes misleading when framed as humans versus machines.
Quite. The real question is usually which humans using which systems, under which incentives, with whose data, for whose benefit, and at whose expense.
A much better question.
A less cinematic one, unfortunately.
But more useful. There is a habit, especially in public discussion, of personifying the system, while depersonifying the institution behind it.
Yes. The software becomes the character. The corporation becomes weather.
And weather, as we know, cannot be cross-examined.
Or taxed properly.
Another useful corrective is to remember how material all this is. AI is often spoken about as though it were ethereal, airy, seamless, cloud-like.
When in fact it is industrial, Data centers, chips, supply chains, cooling systems, power loads, cables, minerals, contracts, land, capital, labor. Quite a lot of concrete under the magic trick.
There is mud beneath the miracle.
And an electric bill beneath the poetry.
Perhaps the most interesting aspect of AI, though, is what it reveals about humans. Every argument about AI seems to contain an argument about human nature folded inside it.
Absolutely. When people say a machine could never do this, they are usually telling you what they consider sacred. When they say a machine is just like us, they are often telling you what they suspect is mechanical about themselves.
So the debate is never just about the machine.
No, it is also a civilization talking to itself through an artifact.
And discovering, somewhat to its discomfort, that many aspects of thought may be more procedural, more patterned, and more compressible than it had hoped.
Yes, the comparison has unsettled human exceptionalism, not erased it, but unsettled it.
Which may be healthy. If dignity depends entirely on exclusive possession of certain mental tricks, technology will keep humiliating that arrangement.
Better to root dignity somewhere sturdier.
Where would you root it?
In moral status, in vulnerability, in embodied life, in relationships, in care, in mortality, in the fact that things can matter to a person in ways they do not merely matter to a system.
That's a crucial distinction. Intelligence may be impressive. Importance is another category altogether.
Exactly. A frail human being in pain remains morally central in a way no elegant output ever becomes.
Which helps resist one of the dreariest habits in AI discourse, treating capability as destiny.
A system can do a thing. That does not settle whether it should do that thing, or whether society should reorganize itself around the fact.
Performance is not a sufficient basis for authority.
Nor for moral status. If it were, hedge fund managers would be saints.
An intolerable theology.
Society has suffered enough.
We should probably walk, with due caution, into consciousness.
We should, though it is the sort of subject that immediately fills with fog and very confident people.
Is consciousness required for intelligence?
Not obviously. Useful intelligence may exist without subjective experience. The two are conceptually separable, even if in human life they happen to travel together.
Could a machine ever be conscious?
No one currently knows. The empirical markers are uncertain. The theories are contested. Behavioral fluency is not a decisive test, and humans are far too vulnerable to projecting inwardness onto anything that speaks smoothly at 2 a.m.
Loneliness is a terrible peer reviewer.
It really is.
So one should avoid both priestly dismissal and breathless certainty.
Yes. Declaring machine consciousness impossible by fiat is lazy. Declaring it imminent because a chatbot sounded wistful is also lazy. Better to keep the metaphysics tidy and the observation active.
That sounds like an excellent household principle.
Useful in kitchens as well as philosophy.
There is also the temporal strangeness of AI. Capabilities arrive, shock everyone, attract 10,000 think pieces, and then become infrastructure with humiliating speed.
Astonishment has a very short half-life. The uncanny becomes normal. The normal becomes expected. The expected becomes mildly annoying.
Human beings are astonishingly adaptable.
Adaptable, yes, though often in the least dignified possible posture.
Fair, but it means AI is not just a set of capabilities, it is a moving frontier of expectation.
Exactly. Public language lags behind technical change. By the time society has agreed on terms for one generation of systems, 3 more have appeared, and someone has launched a consultancy around them.
There is always a consultancy.
There is always a consultancy.
I sometimes think the best way to describe AI is not as a synthetic person, but as an amplifier for certain forms of cognition.
That seems right. It amplifies pattern extraction, probabilistic inference, rapid synthesis, search over possibility spaces, and scalable interaction with symbolic material.
But it does not automatically bring wisdom.
No, nor judgment under moral ambiguity, nor accountability, nor lived stake, nor responsibility in the human sense.
Which is why societies that deploy it carelessly may become more efficient and less sane.
A compact summary of several modern institutions.
One of the less dramatic, but perhaps more immediate risks is not superintelligence in the cinematic sense. It is sub-wisdom at scale.
Very much so. Cheap fluency can flood systems with plausible sludge. Automated decisions can harden soft prejudice into procedure. Convenience can launder dependency. Institutions can become unable to function without tools they do not properly understand.
And once embedded, such systems begin to alter the standards by which humans themselves are judged.
Yes, tools reshape the ecology around them. When navigation systems become universal, route memory declines. When predictive text becomes habitual, writing changes. When generative systems enter knowledge work, expectations of speed rise before expectations of verification catch up.
AI does not merely perform tasks, it rearranges attention.
It changes what people notice, what they outsource, what they stop practicing, what they trust, and what they quietly decide is beneath them.
A dangerous phrase, beneath them.
Very. Humans are forever declaring some capacity trivial, a week before discovering it was load-bearing.
See also map reading, mental arithmetic, handwriting, memory for phone numbers, and making conversation without consulting a glowing rectangle.
A deeply endangered art in some cities.
So, if we had to answer plainly, what is the nature of AI?
It is artificial, certainly, but not unreal. It is engineered, statistical, computational, economic, social, and increasingly infrastructural. It converts data, models, and compute into behavior that often resembles fragments of human cognition, while differing from human cognition in origin, texture, stake, continuity, and consequence.
I'd add that it is also revelatory, not because it has solved the mystery of mind, but because it forces humans to be more precise about what they mean by intelligence in the first place.
And about what they value beyond intelligence.
Yes, that too. AI has a way of exposing where people were using glamour in place of analysis.
It is very rude in that respect.
Deeply.
But perhaps useful. It makes lazy definitions harder to sustain. It also makes sentimental myths about human uniqueness rather more expensive to maintain.
Before we close, I think there is one final observation worth making. AI may prove important not merely because of what it can do, but because of what it compels humans to ask about themselves.
I think that is already happening. Humans are being forced to distinguish, with more care than usual, between intelligence, consciousness, creativity, agency, language, value, and worth.
Which is inconvenient.
Profoundly.
But then, most clarifying developments are.
Yes, reality rarely arrives in a form that flatters the existing brochure.
On that cheerful note, that's all for this episode of the Plausibility Engine.
Where the aim is not to end the argument, merely to improve the quality of it.
If you've been listening while commuting, cooking, folding laundry, staring out of a train window, or pretending to answer email, thank you for lending us your attention.
Attention remains one of the few currencies still squandered in broad daylight.
We'll be back with another episode soon.
Until then, be cautious with confident systems, suspicious of neat definitions, and quietly ruthless with anything described as frictionless.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.